I don't have kids, I'm learning the soul is learning to climb out of its hole. But the question of death in my eye, do I cry when I go? Just let me know.
Welcome to our final movie segment. This is a Flashbacks, a movie that came between the year 1970 and 1999. Powwow Highway from 1989. This offbeat road film, awarded the Filmmakers Trophy at the Sundance Film Festival, tracks the journey of Mello Filbert Bono, a Montana Cheyenne tribe member who drive hundreds of miles to pick up his sister arrested in Santa Fe. Accompanying him is the intensely political Buddy Rudbow. Together, the two discover that they have much to learn from each other about life and strife.
Aren't they picking up Rudbow's sister? Not.
Yeah. And they didn't learn.
Good job, Netflix.
Shut up. That's wrong. That's not a good description. What do we like about Powwow Highway?
I like the two main characters. I think they're a good contrast to each other. They may be a bit stereotypical. Mm-hmm. Like you have the one strong-headed, more scientific, modern type of guy.
Whitey. Rightfully, but
rightfully so. Yeah, in many ways. And then you have the second, more spiritual, tribal guy.
He's definitely on like a spirit quest. He wants to become a true warrior.
And has a lot of faith also, which the other guy doesn't seem to have any. So, I don't know, I thought they were a pretty good contrast to one another.
An odd couple.
Yep.
Despite why you probably picked this movie, this is much more earnest than the title would suggest and the decade would suggest.
Yeah.
It's much more of an independent film type movie, road movie. I actually thought it was pretty darn good. I actually thought the script was pretty interesting. It's kind of low budget in a way, but very earnest and just I don't know exactly how to put it into words, but I feel like there's some depth to this movie that you don't necessarily expect from the title or going into it, but it is there, and it feels like it captures something authentic in the Native American experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I took a Native American literature class in college, and this, to me, felt like everything that we read there. It does feel really authentic. You see that basically the land that they still live on, you see the abject poverty, you see the racism they still have to endure, and just the resentment they have of white people, and yeah, like this just felt kind of, I guess because I have read a few books and seen like a few Native American movies, it felt pretty similar to a lot of other things of titles I cannot remember at this time, but it felt kind of standard to me, and that kind of took some of the punch out of it for me, but I mean not entirely. I mean it's still a good movie. It just wasn't as punchy as it could have been. I mean, you had Graham Greene in it. A surprisingly small role. He was the
one scene.
Yeah, it was just a real shell shocked.
If you don't know who that
Vietnam
is,
vet.
he's basically the Indian in every movie.
Yeah.
He was in Dances with Wolves, the main.
Last of the Mohicans.
Mm-hmm.
He was also in Maverick.
Yep.
Any movie with an Indian.
Any movie with an Indian, you're going to see Graham Greene in. Which, I mean, go him. But yeah, I don't know. This was a sweet movie. I wasn't as into it as the other two. It didn't really grip me as much, or just lead me. The other movies just really like led me along the whole way. It kept me super interested, and this one, like, I was generally interested in what was going on, but it was a little bit slower. It had a little bit more drag to it, but it wasn't bad.
I was talking to Phil earlier about this, and I think I told him To me, this feels. I don't know if have you ever watched the show Northern Exposure, Craig? This felt like an extended Northern Exposure episode to me, in a lot of ways. I mean, it seemed like every episode of Northern Exposure, the white city boy gets lost in the woods and starts having like tribal visions and stuff like that. And I kind of
Joel Fleshman.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of got that impression in a way about this movie, which I don't think, for me at least, is a bad thing. I think Northern Exposure was a pretty solid show.
You can be compared to worse.
Yeah. But it wasn't overly cerebral in that regard. So, the bigger guy, what's his name?
Bono.
Lame Deer.
I don't know. They said his name was Bono. He may have had a more Native American-y sounding name, but
He didn't have his warrior name yet.
yeah.
Right. And he has his car, which he calls his pony. I thought that was cute. His character probably was the best part of this movie to me. I thought he gave a really authentic performance also. Is it that good of a movie? I don't know. I think it's solid in its own regard. I just don't know much that I really like about it, but on the same token, I don't know how much I really hate about it.
Yeah, it left me feeling real neutral about it, and it was good. I've seen all these actors before in other movies, but I didn't think this was a real standout movie.
I kind of thought it was. I mean, as an independent movie, from 1989 or whatever it was, I thought it was a pretty standout movie. I thought the script worked pretty darn well. I thought the performances were believable. I thought they were interesting. You have a guy that's he's prone to violence in a way. He's prone to blow-ups, but at the same point, he's a likable character in a way. Then you have this big guy, this big Indian, lovable bear. I guess I don't know what you call him.
He's prone to snacking.
He is the same part of Marshmallow Man.
Yeah. And I don't know. I connected with this in a way that I didn't expect to, and there are things to criticize about this movie. I think you can argue a lot about some of the things that didn't work very well, but on the whole, I thought it was pretty darn good.
If we were to go into dislikes, I don't like that this story is completely unresolved.
Really?
Yeah, they made sure that the guy was out of town so they could have that vote. What happened? At the end, it's a situation where the cops saw their car explode. Well, I guess there's no reason to go and look at that. And then the credits kind of roll. A couple of seconds later, it's like, okay, well, what happened on the reservation?
They weren't quite all the way away.
Yeah, it's like this movie needed to be about 5 minutes longer.
I guess.
Yeah, like there's just so many reasons.
That was my main dislike, was the ending. I thought that was... I liked the path that they took to get there, and I liked the whole part about the pony in his car dying or whatever, but then they just...
Why go
walk off into the night? Like, I don't know, it seemed a little unresolved.
Yeah, why do this like pretty decent like road story and then not have a resolution to it? They got the lady out of jail. Spoiler. But
I don't know. I guess I didn't.
You don't care about the reservations? You don't care about his people?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I just don't really.
Typical white man.
Yeah, I don't think that was the main story. I think it was more about the
characters.
These characters than. So I didn't really feel like the story was unresolved.
One thing I liked about Red Bow also was the complexity of his character, because he's not just an angry Native American man because the white man's bringing him down. I mean, he served his country and, fought and saw a lot of his friends die, not only to come back and, be treated in some ways as a second-class citizen. I really did like the characters in this movie, and I don't know. My rating of this movie may be slowly increasing the more we talk about it.
And mine's not.
I mean, I think the only thing that really took me out of this story was there was some moments of like cartoon violence or cartoon like fights, and
Yeah.
like there was a moment where there was a fight happening at a powwow that they stopped at just randomly, and then they're getting in a fight, and the main characters are fighting with these bad guys or whatever, and then just like a knife flies out of nowhere and hits the wall in front of and like it was cartoonish in a way to kind of like break up the violence. And then there was like random like gunshots or like people using guns, and just like some of that stuff was not believable. So it kind of had this weird, I don't know, 80s vibe to it in a way.
Yeah.
That it had this weird cartoonish moments to it, which was very atypical of the movie as a whole, I think.
You thought Patrick Swayze was just gonna like bust out,
Yeah,
start dancing.
possibly.
Yeah.
Should we rate Powwow Highway?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go from a 3 to I guess a 3.5. I think this is it's good, but it's for a limited audience, and not everyone's gonna think it's 3.5. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I think it's quite good. I'm right there with you. I give it a 3.5 as well. I think a lot of people can connect to this story in a way. I think the script is really well. I wish there was a little bit better direction and a little bit better handling of the story. There was a few plot points that didn't really work too well that could have been evened out with a better director. But I do feel like the story is strong, and I gave it a 3.5.
I'm gonna give it a 2.5. I didn't dislike the movie. I just didn't like it that much. It was pretty. If you've seen very many Native American movies, it's the kind of standard. I feel like, which isn't a knock against it. It didn't seem special to me because of that.
You felt like it was a generic perspective?
Yeah, kind of actually. Which I don't think it's something most people really get to see. But I was in a fairly unique situation where I got a little more exposure to that sort of thing. So it didn't have as much punch in my direction, unfortunately. I mean, it's not a bad movie. I fucking hate the ending, and I this is one of the few situations where I wish a movie was longer, just because it needed resolution. And yeah, that's definitely a big knock against it for me. So I think 2.5 is pretty fair.